Good afternoon, class. With you today in our tutorial is Mwalimu Kimemia, and I'll be taking you through the parts of the lung, how it functions, and the type of lung volume. So we have a long straw representing the trachea. We have the right and the left lung, and its neighboring organ, the heart. So now, how does the lung function? So every time you take in air, or rather what we call inspiration, it gets inflated. Wow. And every time you breathe out, it gets deflated. And that is what we call expiration. Now, we are going to talk about the type of volumes as far as the lungs are concerned. So the maximum amount of air that a lung can accommodate comfortably without overstretching is what we call the lung capacity. And this varies from one individual to another, from one organism to another. Adults are known to have about 5.5 liters of such amount of air. So, lung capacity can be illustrated as below. So that maximum stretch of this lung of a rabbit is its lung capacity. So a second type of volume is what we call the tidal volume. So tidal volume is the amount of air taken in and out of the lung without forcing. In illustration, that is what we call tidal volume. The amount of air that one can take in and out of the lung without forcing. That type of volume, or rather, that type of lung volume is what we call the inspiratory reserve volume. So inspiratory reserve volume is the amount of air that can only be inhaled forcibly. Every time you breathe in, you can actually force some air on top of the tidal volume. So apart from the tidal volume, that air that you can breathe in, or rather exhale by applying some force, is what we call the inspiratory reserve volume. And it can reach to about 2000 cubic centimeter, equivalent to 2 liters. So now, if you combine the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume, that amount of air in total is what we call the inspiratory capacity. So inspiratory capacity is our fourth type of lung volume, and it is a sum of the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume. Remember again, the tidal volume is what you take in and out of your lungs without forcing. And then the inspiratory reserve volume is that air that you must inhale by applying some force. Now, the fifth one is what we call the expiratory reserve volume. And this is the amount of extra air that you must exhale by applying some force. You apply some force to exhale amount of air, and that is what we call expiratory reserve volume. Adults can actually force 1300 cubic centimeters of this amount of air that we are calling the expiratory reserve volume. Now the sixth one is what we call the vital capacity. And the vital capacity is that amount of air that you must use too much force to exhale from your lungs. You must apply so much force, the deepest possible exhalation. So the amount of air that is removed from your lungs using the deepest possible exhalation is what we call the vital capacity. And then, of course, the seventh type of lung volume is what we call the residual volume, which is the amount of air that remains in the lungs even after the deepest exhalation. Anytime you exhale deeply, the amount of air that remains there is what we call the residual volume. And in adults, it comprises of about 1500 cubic centimeter, or rather 1.5 liters. So now, thank you.